So once you get to the Google Doc, you will then scroll down and just sit back and drink your Diet Coke or your coffee or your Mountain Dew. I do have some presentations to go over. The first topic that we're going to dive into is Google Drawing. So we're going to talk about Google Drawing, and then our fourth objective, which is Jamboard. So we're going to start with Google Drawing. What is Google Drawing, and etc. And then we'll dive into objective 2. And you can see under objective 2, there's a big make a copy of this drawing. If you want, you could go ahead and follow along and go ahead and make that copy, but we'll be coming back to that here shortly. What we do have available on Google Help is a drawing page. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the Google Drawing page on our GoogleHelp-Iowa.gov website. And you will see that there is a slide deck that we're going to go over. So this is always going to be there, always up to date, the best I can do. But this is the presentation that I'm going to go over today, so we can understand what Google Drawing is. As I already said, it is the hidden gem in Google Workspace. Many people don't know what it is, but by a more a stronger definition is Google Drawing is a free web-based diagramming software. It allows users to collaborate and work together, which is the best part of Google anyway. You can see there's several things that you can make: flow charts, organizational charts, website wireframes, etc., concept maps, Venn diagrams, you name it, we can make it in Google Drawing. To describe it in a different format, it's very similar to Paint in Microsoft Office environment, Paint. Some of you may be familiar with Publisher. It's not completely Publisher. It can't do everything that Publisher can do. It's kind of like in between there. So just kind of know that it's got some limitations. It's web-based. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles like Illustrator, Publisher, those big graphic design apps, but it's much more than Paint. So it's kind of like in between. So it's great for end user like myself, probably for most of us. If you're truly in graphic design, you're probably not going to love Google Drawing, but you're going to then know how easy it can be used to collaborate. So that is huge, especially when you're trying to publish something fast or even just collaborative. Great for screenshots, annotation. Well, today we'll make a poster. It's not a great poster. It's just the idea of learning drawing, but you can do so much with drawing. Where can you find Google Drawing? That's probably the most question I get. I don't even see Google Drawing. Well, it's inside your Google Drive. You would go to your Google Drive as you normally would, go to the waffle, navigate to Drive. Then you would click the new button as you normally do, but it's under the more. So when you go to the new, you will find it under the more button. Then you will see the option of Google Drawing. So if you want to create a Google Drawing on the scratch, that's one way. If you took the Google Docs training last week and the week before, we dived into Google Drawing quite a bit within Google Docs. You can insert a drawing inside Google Docs. So it's kind of in a multiple way of accessing Google Drawing. You can also just type in drawings.google and get you a blank canvas as well. I already kind of talked about this in the what is Google Drawing, but why Google Drawing? Let's dive into that. Google Drawing you could see infographics, flow charts, diagrams, posters. What I use it for in my thing is I use it all the time for web buttons. Every button that you see on Google Help, every button you see on Okta, those are created in Google Drawing. All those options, all those tools that you see on the two big websites that I maintain were created from Google Drawing. So web buttons were created from for the Okta website, the Google Help website, the project investment site. I've used Google Drawing for most of those buttons on there. The other thing that I use, again, is many of us love Google Forms. You can make really dynamic Google form headers to make it fit your branding guidelines. So again, great for form headers, also for site headers as well. It's a really good tool to use your branding guidelines as well. And you can see you can do instructions, interactive games. Yes, you can play tic-tac-toe. You can play chess. You can do lots of fun things within Google Drawing if you really have the time for those types of things. And you can see business models, charts, and etc. If you've been in any trainings, again, I'll repeat myself. My kind of stock, lack of a better word, Alice Keeler. She is a Google certified innovator, actually. And she has a lot of tips and tricks. And, it takes a lot of work to create materials. Well, then just borrow those materials. So I'm borrowing one of Alice Keeler's. And this is a great poster that you can access by clicking on the tips and tricks. And you can see that it gives you a quick diagram. And I think she probably made it inside, or poster inside Google Drawing, of how to use Google Drawing. So these are some good shortcuts. We will go over most of these, but not all of them. So there's a great resource for you. Google Drawing resources and templates. One thing that I find a little frustrating is that Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Sites, Google Currents, you name it, they have a Google Help section in the sense of Google fill in the blank. But with drawing, there's only one resource for it within Google. So we then need to borrow other great resources. So you can see that I have added that for you. Again, my background is education, and a lot of people use Google Drawing for education. And so some of them are tied into education resources, but keep in mind, you have to think outside the box. How would you use this in the business aspect? How would you use it for the public sector? But this will give you a lot of what can you do with Google Drawing. And I can't emphasize enough, I took the time to find valuable resources, not just, type in Google Drawing. Oh, that looks good. No, these are valuable. Other Google specialists that this is their primary job is to publicize Google tips. And these are really good resources if you really love Google Drawing as much as I do. So, or maybe like, how can I make an infographic with, well, you can do it in Google Drawing. You can also do it in Google Slides. You can do it multiple ways. And so you can steal and borrow these templates for your own case scenario. As I mentioned earlier, Google Drawing is also part of your Google Docs. Again, you're like, well, I don't know what she's talking about. Well, then I strongly encourage you to check out the advanced Google Docs training. We actually did this. We actually put a drawing inside a Google Doc. So you could actually embed or start a new one or insert one from a one that's already created. Here's an example, a case scenario, why this is so powerful. If you went to the Okta website, I'm picking on Okta, you can see that there's tons of instructions there, tons of written instructions with screenshots and with little annotations. Every single screenshot in there is not just a static screenshot. If you were an editor, you would be able to double click that, and then it is a true drawing embedded inside that doc. So it made our instructions more appealing for you instead of just a highlighted thing. So it's a lot of annotation. It works great for instructions. That's how I use it. But again, if this is a instruction manual for DNR, how to sign up for fill in the blank, Google Docs and Google Drawing can make your life a lot easier. Could be great for a newsletter. A newsletter always has the content, the text, but then you have a picture inside it. So again, I'm just trying to give you some case scenarios. Like, I don't know why I'd use this. You would use it if you do anything with images inside a doc, or you need to be more of a graphic. Maybe you're doing a diagram or a workflow process. Drawing can provide you that tool instead of having Lucid Chart and any of those other high-end expensive tools. Drawing can do your job free. So with that, just kind of know there's plethora of resources on the Google Drawing page. Just wanted to provide you, there is some tips and tricks here for you. And then we'll update the training video once we're done with this video. So again, I just kind of updated, cleaned that up today, or not today, but before today's training. So it is there for you and anybody else that wants to review it. So what are we going to do today? Today is objective 2. We're going to make a poster, and I'm going to apologize in advance. It's not the best looking poster, but my goal is to teach you the tools so you can make the best looking poster or web button or form header or whatever the case may be. This is what we're going to make. Again, like I said, it's not beautiful. It's a poster. We're going to go over how our goal is to create this poster together, or again, on your own time. But this is our hopefully end product will display once we're done messing with our copy today. So this is the after effect. We're going to start here so you can kind of see what it looks like. I'm going to go back to the Google Doc objectives and script, I want to go ahead and start making a copy. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you guys are trying to follow along, and again, this is more of a sit and get, but if you want to go ahead and just make your own copy, you can just click on the make a copy of this drawing. It will take you to this screen, which allows you to make your own copy. So it's one for you to manipulate and adjust as we go through today. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy. And you will notice when you make a copy, you have all these images on there. This is just for time constraints and to give us some idea of how to adjust some of the things that we already have. So this is why it looks like this, but we know what our final product is going to look like in a sense. So that's what we're trying to build, just to kind of give you a good understanding of some of the tools that we have within Google Drawing. So again, just letting you know what our goal is today. I do want to remind you what is best practice. Again, if you've been in my training, what do we always do? We always name it. You should always name the file. And you should always organize it. So just to remind you, those are just so important. You can organize it by naming it, and you can call this into your Google Drawing folder as you go, and making sure you know where to find this file at a later time. Again, that is just best practice. This isn't drive training. I'm just reminding you how important that is. And so make sure you always do that when you start a document so you know where to find it at a later time. So now that we have this canvas, you can see the canvas is actually the area that looks like checkerboard. It looks like a checkerboard. That just indicates that it's a transparent canvas. This is our working area. Right here is our working area in the checkerboard, the transparent background. So the current size of this canvas, you do not maybe know exactly. You do see that you do have a ruler. You do have a ruler at the top, and you have a ruler on the left-hand side. But when you're dealing with pictures, and again, I am not by far any graphic design expert, but it is important to know what size you are trying to create with. Like, for example, are you doing a web button? Should it be 100 by 100 pixels? Should it be, is it a poster? Probably should be 8.5 by 11. You have to determine what is the size of the canvas before you really kind of get started. So how do you determine the size of the canvas? And you get to choose what type of dimensions you want to use. So the first thing I would do, if this is really your first time within Google Drawing, is determine how big do you want your end product to be. So let's make sure we know where that's at. You're going to go to File, and you'll notice this is very similar to Docs. You'll see the same things that we saw in Google Docs: File, make a copy, email, and etc. We're not going to go over that because that's kind of like basic Google Doc editors. The purpose of this training is just understanding what Google Drawing can do for you as an end user. So we're going to go ahead and go to File, and we're going to go to Page Setup. And you'll notice you have, oops, I didn't mean to go that big. Hold on a second. I was trying to blow it up, but I went too big. You'll notice you have Page Setup as an option. 8.5 by 11 is what it's set for. So in inches. So you can see, though, you can choose centimeters, points, and pixels. I do use pixels quite often. I will adjust that to pixels. So like, for example, my web button that I keep talking about, I will adjust it by pixels. So if you know what pixels are, you could adjust it by that as well. It's up to you. But just know that you have different dimensions to choose from. So keep that in mind as well. You do have some like standard. I usually just kind of choose the dimensions that I want because I know what the end product should be. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and keep it 8 by 11, and I'm going to go ahead and apply. But be aware of that's very important when you're doing that. So we know what the final poster looks like. Let's just look at the final poster. We have the Google Help banner over here, and we have a blue rectangle box right here, okay? So that's the first thing we're going to focus on is the top part of the poster. So how do we get it to look like this? So on your own, you'll notice on the left-hand side, you have a Google Help picture. Now, I have already took the time to insert these images. So for those that don't know, you would insert an image just like you do in Google Docs. You would click Insert, and you have the same options that we have had before: upload, search, drive, photos, by URL, and your camera. So that is how you would insert the image of your choice for future. Again, I'm just trying to teach you beyond the basic insertive images at this time. So what you need to do is go ahead and click on the Google Help banner. And once you click on an item, you get a blue line around it. That's meaning that item is selected. You want to know what action you're taking, you can always look at your bar at the top. You can see that the select arrow is highlighted in blue. So that means you are currently in the mode of selecting something. So when you select something, you can do several things when you have an item selected. In this case, we just want to go ahead and drag it over to our canvas, because our canvas, again, is the transparent portion where it's got the checker box. So that's our working canvas. The rest of it is just a working area for you. It doesn't mean if I would go to File Print right now, the only thing that would print would be the Google Help banner. So everything outside is not in the printable area, but it's considered a working area if you need additional space. Okay. So we have now moved the Google Help banner. It looks like it fits perfectly inside my canvas at this time. So the next thing I want to do is I have this gray rectangle shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm highlighting it, which is also means selecting it. I'm going to go ahead and drag it underneath my Google Help banner image. Now, you'll notice in the final poster, that particular rectangle is not gray. So we want to adjust the color of that. Now, so what we can do up at the top, you will see that you have a fill color and a border color. I want both the fill color and the border color to be Google Workspace blue. Okay, so it's the blue that we see here inside all the Google Workspace apps. I'm branding it, aren't I? I'm trying to customize it to fit Google's branding guidelines. So with that, I have the rectangle highlighted, and I'm going to go up to the paint or the fill bucket, looks like a paint bucket, and you will see that there is an option that you should see that says custom, meaning I have already customized that color in the previous copy with a hex code. If you don't know what a hex code is a code of each color that you can customize for that code of hex, right? So you can see that you can always create your own by clicking on the plus button. This is important because if you're following any branding guidelines like OCIO does, they have hex codes available to match the OCIO branding guidelines, like the blue, the gray, the fluorescent green. And we want to match that exact color. And usually most communication specialists will prefer you to match the colors, and they will provide you a hex code. So if you're trying to make a poster for your agency, always try to match the branding guidelines. I know DNR has their own branding guidelines. You want to fit those, and you would get provided a hex code, and you would create that custom color inside your canvas by going there, okay? Or you can try to match it up. There's a lot of fun extensions that you can use to help determine what your colors are that you're trying to match, but I'm not going to go down that training option right now. But with that, I want it to be the blue. So I'm going to go back to the bucket, and I'm already going to go ahead and use the customized blue that I already have available that's been created by me earlier. And you can see that the fill line, the border color is already blue as well. So now I have already gotten the top part of my Google drawing to match my final poster. Okay. So this is a rectangle shape. We'll add some shapes here down the road, but you can see that you do have a shape button over here right next in your toolbar. And you can see all the different shapes. Obviously, we could spend hours just testing all these different shapes. These are just so you know that there's a lot of different options to choose from regarding inserting shapes. Can you already see that you have a lot more shapes to choose from than paint, right? So you have a lot of ways to annotate and express your canvas. So with that, let's go to the poster and see what we have next. So our next objective in this particular training is that we want to have the next section be Gmail, Calendar, Drive, Doc Editors, and Meet. Those are separate images. They're all separate images. It has a white background, and also there's text inside underneath each one of them. We're going to learn some tips here like grouping, how to distribute horizontally, How do you adjust the size? We're going to do a whole bunch of different things to manipulate the pictures and the graphics to match what it looks like for that final poster. That is our goal. So how do we get it to look identical to that? Identical is maybe a little strong word, but we're going to go ahead and do that. So the first image that we saw on the left-hand side was Gmail. So we see over here, we have a Gmail, big Gmail on the left-hand side. It's huge. So go ahead and select that Gmail. And you can see it's just really too big for what we're trying to do. So what we could do, though, is go ahead and move it over to your canvas. We know that it should go here, but we want to go ahead and we probably need to make this smaller, right? That's not our goal. So what we can do then is when you have the blue selected lines around it, you will notice that you have these like little arrows, those little squares around each one of those. That is a way that you can adjust the size. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and move it in this way. Now, I'm going to stop and pause there for a second. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. That's not best practice. If you've been in graphics at all, it is not good to distort your image. It's going to, if I go like that, what happens? It makes it a smushed M, okay? We don't want a smushed M. We want a proportioned M. So the best way to do that is always grab from the corners. So in this case, you want to go ahead and drag from the corner. So when you drag from the corner, you will move it up and you'll notice it's going to stay proportioned. We want it to stay proportioned. We don't want a squished M. So notice it did not get distorted. Now you could adjust this multiple ways. You could always right click, as we mentioned in Google Docs, and you can always have the same option over here to format options. Now I'm going to do kind of my way of creature of habit, but again, I want to point out other ways that you can do it because maybe you know identically how or like the exact size you want that image to be. And that would be where I'd go to format options. And I can go to format options by right clicking, and you can see that you have size, position, recolor, adjustments, drop shadow, reflection. So these have a lot more options if you're looking for those particular tools. We're, again, not going to go over every one of them, but it's important that you know. We also know our toolbar changes up here as well, depending on the item that we select. We talk about that in docs. You can kind of see that it functions identical as it does in slides, it does in docs, does in sheets. Your toolbar adjusts as you select a different item. So keep that in mind. So if you can't find something, just scroll your eyes up at the top of the toolbar. What options do you have? And if you can't see that, then what's the second option? You can always right click and you'll see the options there as well. So make sure that you know right click and always look at the toolbar and you will see all the different options you have for the item that you have selected. With that, I'm going to go ahead and just see what the size is. You can see it's 3.5 by 3.5 inches. We know right now that's a little too big. So I could go ahead and adjust it here as well. Also, you can see lock aspect ratio. That's important because you don't want it to be a smushed M. So again, you can see there's a lot of different options. You can rotate it, flip, etc. So again, I'm going to go to the way I know. I'm just going to go ahead and just drag it and just kind of eye it is what I'm going to do today. So the next thing we have is calendar, drive, docs, and meet. So we're just going to kind of rinse and repeat on some of this. So the next one is calendar. So this is just kind of repeat. We bring calendar over. We're going to shrink it, keep it proportioned by grabbing from the corners. And we're going to kind of just eye it, make sure it's looking identical. You also will notice as you're moving, you will see grid lines, or they're not called grid lines, they're called guides. You will see that you probably have some guides showing. You might want to make sure that you're showing your guides if you choose to. You can always go to view and you can show more guides and click on show guides if you want. You have the red lines if you choose. You have a lot of ways to provide feedback as you're navigating. So definitely, I forgot to mention, under the view, you have more options than what you normally have in Google Docs. You have some options to, and many of you that are graphic designs know exactly what all this is, guides, snap to, Those are the same terminologies that you use probably in Publisher or Illustrator. Those are the same concepts. So again, I don't really fall into that bucket. I just kind of know how to manipulate and try to adjust whatever I'm trying to make. So I kind of got the calendar here, but you do see that the red line is helping me to determine is it lined up. So definitely pay attention to the red lines as they go, as you move the stuff. The next image, I believe, is Drive. So let's go ahead and find Drive. Now you're probably like, I can't find Drive. That's correct. You do have Google Drive for desktop. It's on the left-hand side of your Google Drawing. You'll notice this one says Google Drive for desktop. Now, we don't want it to say Google Drive for desktop, but I do want the Drive icon. Obviously, I could go find the Drive icon on the web. I could find it in my Drive. But my goal for you is now to teach you how to crop an image. So in this case, I just want the triangle to show, but I do not want Google Drive for desktop to show in my poster. But this is, I want to mask it. I want to crop it. So what we're going to do now is you could actually crop the image, which takes out space around the image that you don't want to display. In this case, we want to remove Google Drive for desktop. So you can do it multiple ways. You can go up at the top, and as long as you have a picture of the Drive icon selected, you will then see up here you have a crop image option. You have a crop image option. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the crop image, and you can see now I have a black line around it. The other way you can do it that I do most of the time is if I want to make the conscious decision to crop, I'm going to double click the image. If I double click the image, I then get the black line around it. Now that I have the black line around it, now I need to grab the markers to what I want to crop. In this case, I want to grab the marker down here, and I want to remove Google Drive for desktop to appear in my image. I'm going to go ahead and drag the bottom of it, and you will see now that the Google Drive for desktop is lighter, and it's not going to appear once I click off of that image. So if I click off that image, now I no longer see that Google Drive for desktop. So I have cropped that portion of it. I could crop more if I choose to. I could go and take the bottom. Whoops, be careful. That's exactly what happens. I use the undo. Sometimes you accidentally grab the blue versus the black. And if you do, just get out of it, undo, and do that because the blue is going to shrink it, right? Or expand it. In this case, you would just want to actually crop it, still double click, or go up here and crop it. And once you get the black lines, that's giving you the indication that you are cropping. And also look at your toolbar, the crop icon is selected. So that's telling you the action that you're taking. So I'm going to get off of it. And now that it's just still blue, my select button is highlighted. So that's telling me I'm selecting. And now I want to move it up here and match it up with the rest of them. And I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down just a little bit and trying to match all these up. All right, so the next one is doc editors. Is that right? The next image is doc editors. That's correct. So I'm going to select the doc editors. This time, I'm just going to pull it here. This one's slightly different. This time, I have an image with a circle around it. Okay. Well, I don't want the circle to display. Okay. So this time I'm going to crop it, but this time I'm going to actually, by definition, mask it. Mask it is a slightly different terminology than cropping. So, but we're going to use the same toolbar. So now notice when I hover over the crop, it gives me the crop image, but if you go right to the right of it, it has a drop down and it says mask image. Go ahead and click the drop down next to the crop button. And now you'll notice you can actually mask an item by a shape. So it will then select the shape and give you the capability of masking it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the drop down. In this case, I'm going to choose a circle as my shape. You can see I have all these other different options. You can get really fancy with masking if you choose to. In my case, I really want to mask it and get rid of the circle. That's my purpose of what I'm doing right now. You know, it would have been a lot harder to crop it and try to get all those little areas. I wouldn't have been able to do that very well with the crop part. I'm going to be able to do it a lot easier in the mask option. So I'm going to go ahead and select the circle. And now when you do that, you will see when you double click inside there now, you can actually remove it by the circle. So you'll double click, and this is a little tricky. I'm not very good at it. But what we're doing is actually we're cropping it in the shape of a circle is really what we're doing. I'm going to blow this up so you guys can see it better. But notice now I have actually, by choosing the mask option by a circle, and when I double click, it's actually going around in a circle and masking the rest of it around. Okay. And so that will actually make it a circle shape. It's like a frame, right? It's giving you a frame shape, whatever shape you choose of that image. You get really fancy. Think of it, if you have a beautiful background and you just want a shape of a moon and you're masking it, you can get really fancy with this. What I use it for mostly is trying to crop an image of some sort and trying to fit it the way I want. That's the purpose I use it for a lot. But you will notice if you choose the drop down of a circle, you have a different image now, and it's in a circle form. Oval, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, and I'm going to resize this as well to kind of match the same. And the last one is Google Meet, and we're just going to go ahead and resize this one proportion by grabbing it from the arrows. Don't worry about lining it up too much. We got a tip for that. We have a tip for that. So in theory, we have not in theory, we should have Gmail, Calendar, Drive, doc editors, and Meet in that order. Okay. And somewhat the same size around. Okay. Might not be perfectly centered, might not be all that great, but we'll figure that out later. Okay. Now, one thing that you want to do is you want to sometimes select multiple images at once and kind of maybe group them together because they're considered a one static image now, or we might want to distribute them horizontally, vertically, all sorts of things to kind of help make it look good. So if you have it a pretty good size across the board, it's not going to be perfect as I train this today. You can select multiple images different ways. Option one is you can notice that I have the pointer selected. I'm holding my mouse down and I am getting this rectangle box and I'm just kind of selecting the area that I want. In this case, I just want to focus on Gmail, Calendar, and etc. I just want to focus on those images right now. That's what my mind is consciously deciding. I just want to focus on those images. I can do that. And when I do that, notice it now selected all of those. Okay. It selected all those that I drug across. Okay. So all I did, just to repeat, is hold my mouse down. Now I get this little cross and everything in that box I am selecting. Okay. That's one option. The other option is you can always hold down, click on the first item that you want, and then you can use the famous Shift or Control button to select multiple items. Shift is sequential, and Control is wherever you want to go. So most of the time, especially with images, I will hold the Control button down, and now when I hit Control, I'm selecting the items of my choice. So again, this is a really good tip. I select the first one that I want. Now I'm holding the Control button and selecting, just keep clicking away at the items that I want. You can see this can be very beneficial when you're trying to select more than one item. Now I would like it to be distributed horizontally so everything's evened out equally. Okay, I want to make sure all the spaces are equal out. So a quick way to do that is you can right click on those selected images and you will see that you have an option to distribute Horizontal. You also, for this case, vertical is not going to work for you. It could work for you down the road for a different project, but it's not going to work for this one. I'll just go ahead and show you vertically just to show you, see what it does. I did it wrong again. Oh, in this case it worked, but either way you can do both in this one. Sorry, my bad. Vertically or horizontal. Horizontal then and vertically will actually, oh, I was thinking of vine. Yeah, so you might, excuse me, I apologize. Distribute horizontally and vertically in this case would be a good choice. In this case, sorry. Doesn't always. It just depends on what you're trying to do. No, vertically doesn't do well. Just do horizontal. I apologize. I should stick to my notes. Distribute horizontal. Okay. No, it's not really perfect. What am I doing here? It's because these sizes are not the same. I have to be honest. I sometimes just play. Horizontal will make it centered across, and that's what we're after. Yeah, let's do horizontal. So if you want to fix it, you can, but distribute horizontal. Again, I promise you it's not going to look perfect on this. All right, so underneath these images, we have text boxes that say Gmail, etc., etc. So I'm going to show you some shortcuts with this. So we have it all ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're first going to insert a text box. We're going to go insert, you can go to text box as an option, or you can just click on the box with the letter T. Go ahead and click on the text box, and we're going to add the word Gmail underneath there. So drag the area that you want, and then just go ahead and type in Gmail. Now, that's fine. That looks okay. It's not perfect, but I do want to change the font to be bold. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight Gmail, and I want it to be bold. So I just do either Command Control B or select bold, and then I want it to be font 16. So I could either hit the plus button to get it to 16, and then I'm going to Roboto, and I'm selecting Roboto, doesn't matter, normal, doesn't really matter, and bold. So it's kind of, that's the size, that's kind of the way I want it to look if we look at the final poster. So again, this doesn't have to be exact. This is just showing that you can customize the font, you can adjust the size, and you can make it bold, italicized, underline, fill in the blanks, highlight it. You can do all those things that we're so used to doing, and even Word or Google Docs, basic editing that we're used to. Now, what I want to show you is that you can actually, let's go ahead and insert another text box. I'm going to show you some tips here. This is not the way I would normally do it, but I want to show you some tips. I'm going to go ahead and insert another text box, and this time I'm going to type in calendar, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time. And I'm going to do drive. And I want you to stop if you are following along. Don't get like, oh, well, this is easy. No, this is not the best way to do this, to be honest. Because now some of you might think, okay, now I have to go back into calendar, change it to bold, got to go back to Roboto, 16. That's a lot of clicks. Okay, that's a lot of clicks. So one way to quickly format is to go ahead and highlight the Gmail, because we know the Gmail is exactly the way we want it to look like. So I'm going to highlight the Gmail. I'm going to go up to the paint roller, and I'm going to double click this time. When I double click, it gives me the capability of repeating that task of formatting. Remember, in Docs, we could do this in Docs, and we can do this in Slides. And I think we still can do this in drawing. Watch me mess up on this, but I'm pretty sure it works in drawing. So if you double click the paint roller, it gives you the capability of repeating that task of painting the format, which is what we're doing. So now that I have the roller, I'm going to now highlight calendar. And I'm going to do the same thing with drive. That still saved me a lot more clicks and making sure it's accurate, right? So the format paint roller that we've used in Docs works here as well. And we always know that the paint roller is selected. Not only gives you the paint roller icon mouse look, it also showing you up here that the paint roller is the action that you're choosing. So I'm going to go uncheck the paint roller because I no longer want to use the paint roller concept anymore. What I'm going to show you next is really cool, is to duplicate as well. So what does duplicate mean? It actually means I'm going to repeat or copy the exact same task that I just did, or the item that I'm selected. So we know that drive is exactly the way I like it, and I want it to be doc editors and meet to be displayed. So I know it's perfect. It's a perfect size. It's identical the way I want it. So I'm going to go ahead this time and select drive, and now I'm going to hit Control D as in dog. So go ahead and hit Control D as in dog. That duplicates it. That's not a copy and a paste concept. It could have been a Control Z and a Control V. Could have been, but you do have the capability of duplicating, and duplicating is a lot easier sometimes because it just duplicates. I could duplicate the meat thing. This is a perfect example. Perfect, same size, and now I have, how many meats do I have by hitting Control D? Control D is a nice feature that you can use. Okay, so now that I've done that with drive, I'm going to go back and just move drive over here and adjust it to say doc editors. Now it just copied all the formatting and all the good stuff. I'm going to do Control D again with doc editors this time. I have Control D, copied doc editors. I'm duplicating that. And now I'm going to type in meat. Okay, so we kind of need to do some formatting here. We could see in my example, might not be on yours, but calendar is just a little small. I could adjust, resize the shape to fit text. You have this new option that appears. You've seen this in Google Slides. You can always use those features, or you can expand it and make it fit the way it needs to. So go ahead and just kind of adjust it so it kind of lines up. Like I said, we're not going to spend tons of time on making it look perfect, okay? All right, so you can just make sure it's lined up well and so on. Now, notice that some of these pictures, they all have kind of a white background. Some you can see the transparency, but I would like it to look like this one. Notice it's just clean. It's got a white background right here. Let's make sure we get that white background there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to insert a shape right here, and it's this rectangle, and we want it to be white. Okay, that's what we're going to do next. So in this case, we're going to go up to the top where it says insert shape, or you can go to insert shape either way, or you can go to the shape option in the text box. But in this case, we're going to choose the shape rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and choose a rectangle shape. I'm going to make it fit in that area. Uh-oh, what did I do? No worries. Let's keep working. Now I have this rectangle in front of everything that I just did. That's not going to work, is it? But we got a solution for that. Well, let's get it designed since it's in the front. Let's get it the way we want it to look. We first of all want it to be a white rectangle. So let's go ahead and go back to the fill button. Let's go to the fill button and let's make sure it's white. So let's go over here and select the solid, and you have white. I also want the border to be white. So I go ahead and go to the border option, and I want it to be white. Okay, we still have a problem. The rectangle is in front of all our apps, Gmail, etc. So what we want to do here is we want to send it to the back. Send it to the back of the room. So you're going to right click and select that, and you can see then you have this option of right click. You have an option to do order. You have bring it to the front. Well, it's already in the front. It's in my way, right? You have bring it forward, which would bring it one level up. That's not going to, doesn't have that capability anymore because it's in the front, right? Send it back would go back one level, and then send it to the back. It's going to go all the way to the end of the caboose, right? Well, in this case, I want it to go all the way to the back. So you have different options there. Okay, so, and you have the same concept in slides. Send it to the back, bring it to the front. Where do you want this to be displayed? I'm going to go ahead and send it to the back. Whew. There are my images. No worries. So we're really we're getting there, right? It's not perfect, but we got it pretty figured out, right? So now that we have that, let's look at our final poster. We're halfway done with this. We have another rectangle box, but I want it to be the exact size. We have a picture that we're going to add, and we have another box we're going to do. And we're going to add some word art. So the next step is I could just do Control-C and Control-V. That's one option to get that exact same rectangle. Or what's the shortcut that I just taught you? If I have the highlighted, I can hit Control-D, and now I have duplicated that same rectangle, and I'm just going to bring it down. Do you see how beneficial? We know it's the exact size that I had before. It's identical, right? We're duplicating that. So it really can save a lot of time. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to insert a word art, and that's Google Workspace for the state of Iowa. So what is word art? Well, we saw how we can add text, right? We did the Gmail calendar and Drive. We can do that, but that's not fancy blocked lettering, is it? It's just basic font types, right? So what you can do is you can add word art, which is also known as, like in my world, it's called block lettering. So under Insert, you have the option to do word art. So go ahead and do Insert Word Art. You're going to get this box. Now, we're going to type in what we want. Now, read what it says there when you see that. It says use Enter to save. So if I hit Enter, it's going to save it. But if I want multiple lines, such as what we have here, Google Workspace line for state of Iowa, I'm going to have to hit Shift Enter after the word Workspace. Okay, so now that I've read Google's help here, I'm going to go ahead and type in Google Workspace, Shift Enter to get multiple lines. Now I have a second line, and I'm going to type in for state of Iowa. Now that I'm done typing, I now have multiple lines. I am going to now hit Enter to save. So I'm going to hit Enter, and now I have this blocked lettering. I'm going to move it down in the area that I have chosen, and I don't really like that font. I don't want Arial. So what I could do is I could adjust the font. You could try different fonts if you choose. There's a whole bunch. There's nothing that you can choose. I could look for more fonts, and you can see that you have a lot of different options. One of the fonts that I'm looking for is Ultra, just because I know it's not one of my basic ones, but I do want you to point out there is a lot of different fonts that you can go get more fonts. I get the question a lot, well, Microsoft Office has all these extra fonts. Well, actually Google does too. You just have to click more fonts. Okay, that's the same thing in Google Doc editors. So when you're dealing with drawings, you do sometimes want to get a little bit more graphic. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Ultra. Now we're getting to the font that I like. Okay, I don't like the coloring. It's kind of an icky blue in my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it with white. So I'm going to go up here and choose fill. This time I'm going to choose transparent. Sorry, I'll explain that in a minute. I'm going to choose transparent. And I want the border to be white. Uh-oh, can't see it. No worries. We're going to fix that. We're going to fix that. So remember, let's look at the final poster. Notice that the Google Workspace is transparent because it's bringing in the rectangle gradient box, right? It's got the box behind it. So we need to add our box so it will bring that gradient color of a box behind it. So let's go ahead and insert a rectangle in that same area. Okay, same issue that we just had before. It's in the front, but let's get it formatted to the way we want first. This time we're going to fill, but we're not going to choose solid. We're going to go to gradient, and we're just going to pick any of these, but you notice you can do the same thing. You can customize and etc. I'm just going to go ahead and just choose one of these pretty blues, I'm going to go ahead and select this one. You'll notice now it's got a gradient. You can adjust that. You can do lots of fun things with that. I just want to give you the option that you know that you can do gradient. Okay. Now, we did a transparent in the fill of the word Google Workspace for Iowa. So now I want that text to come in the front. So I got to repeat that same process that I just did earlier by sending that rectangle to the back. Okay. I want that in the back. So I'm going to right click on that rectangle and I'm going to send it to the back. Well, I think it's getting there. I think I'm going to move the Google Workspace down just a little bit, but I think it needs to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to make the border just be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go ahead and know right next to the border, you have the option to adjust the size of pixels for the outline. So I'm just going to make it stand out more in the block lettering. Woo! That stands out much better. Okay. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and add an image. So I want to point out inside Google Drawing, you have insert image, and you can actually search on the web. And we're going to go ahead and search on the web just because it's easier to train. You can add any image, obviously, but we're going to search on the web, and we're going to add the state of Iowa capital. So just type in state of Iowa capital and pick any of them. There's no wrong answer. It might not look identical to our poster, but that's not the point. Just pick anything that looks like the capital and insert. Okay, so it's not quite the way I want. I kind of want just the dome to show, the pretty gold dome. That's all I want to show. Okay. Well, this is a trick that I like. If it's a good high resolution image, I'm going to go ahead and expand this image. I'm still keeping it proportioned. Sometimes you got to get it out of the way. There we go. But I want it to fit in my canvas, so I still just need to kind of resize this so it fits in my canvas. I'm just adjusting, all proportioned. So now I have just the dome, but you'll notice down here, it's kind of off my canvas. Well, that's going to be fine because I want to just have the dome displayed. So if this is getting too big of a canvas for you, what you can do up here is go to Zoom, and you can change it to 50%. Sometimes your canvas can get kind of big. You're like, how does it really look like? So you can always adjust. You can zoom in, zoom out, but I'm going to go ahead and just go to 50%. I'm going to go ahead and change it to 50%. Now I have more real estate to deal with. Now I want to really crop the image. I just want the dome to show. So I'm going to use the way that I normally do. I will double click that, and I can get the crop part, which is the black markers, and I'm going to crop the image and remove the rest of it, and now I just have the dome. So now I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. I might crop it on the inside. I might go here because cropping doesn't change the proportion of it. It just takes off part of the image. Anybody's done anything with Shutterfly, you know what cropping does. So there we go. We're almost there. And we got it pretty lined up. I'm not going to spend any more time fixing this because I'm running out of time, but you get the concept, right? You could mess with your own. So now we've kind of done a really decent job, not my best poster, but we got it, right? Now I want to insert a link. You can insert a link to an image as well, because this could be helpful, like an infographic. Learn more about our stats, right? So you can always, I'm not going to do it, but I'll show you. You just highlight the image that you want in that area that's placed on your drawing to be a hyperlink. You can do that. Like if I wanted it to go to Google Help, when they click on the banner, you highlight that particular area, and you can insert a link and add it to a particular website, Google Doc, whatever. This is going to be interactive, right? It could be an interactive infographic. It could be an interactive option for you. The other thing I like to do is I like to select all sometimes or group things. So in this area, let's say, for example, this little Gmail calendar drive and me, I need to use this for a presentation, or I want to group this area and duplicate that, or whatever. Like this section is perfect. I'm going to reuse this, or I'm just going to reuse it on my own. And so sometimes I will then just select, again, holding down just the area that I want selected. And now I want to group these images and consider them a one item. Okay, just one item. So when I do that, I can right click on there and you have the option to group them. So everything that I have selected is now going to be considered a group or one item. So I'm going to go ahead and group them. Now notice when I move this, it moved the entire thing. I didn't have to worry about selecting just the Gmail or whatever. I can still adjust individual by double clicking them. I can still make minor adjustments, but they're still considered one. It's a group. So can you imagine then if you select all, you could group this entire image, paste it in a slide deck, right? Paste it into that. So like you have some options that way. Google Drawing and slides work really good. So if you make this great web button and you copy this, it's going to copy that identical thing into your slide. Not perfect, does not work in drawing docs because you're going to use drawing as your tool to make that picture, right? So just telling you, it works really good with slides. So you can then also group this entire thing by Control A, which is select all, or you can do the same thing as highlighting it all. Everything I have just done, highlighted in that area, is going to group them as well. Okay, you can always right click and then choose group, right? And if you change your mind that you don't want this to be a one person thing, right, just showing you that you can move it, you can always select it all and choose ungroup. Okay, it depends on what you're doing, right? Grouping can save you a lot of time. You can do a lot of the same things that we're doing here is going to prepare you for slides training. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's two-folded. So what you can think you can do here, you can do in slides more than likely. Okay, same concept, front to back, grouping, horizontal, center to page, which we didn't do. There's a lot of things in here that you can do. So if all else fails, do a quick a tour of the options here, right? Let's do select all again and look at now arrange horizontally, vertically, rotate, group, ungroup, align, center. You can fix all those little issues that you have at the end when you're trying to tweak it, right? You want it to be completely lined up. So those are just some tips and tricks on that. Last thing is maybe this is the poster and now you wanted to insert it. Maybe you want to insert in a Microsoft Word file. I don't know what you want to do, right? You do have a lot of download options. You can always download it and make it a PNG, JPEG, even for my graphic design people, an SVG. You know what you can do with that. You can do lots of layering within Publisher or whatever. Make a lot of different changes to that. So keep that in mind. You can also print it if you choose to. So depending on the size that you have, it's going to print in this one an 8.5, 8 by 11. And then one thing that I didn't mention, but we all by now, if we don't know this, Google loves to do what? Collaborate, collaborate, and collaborate. The thing is, this is how the Octosite got done in a week because Jolie and I were able to collaborate at the same time. So we were sharing everything to work on it. And so we could work on a drawing together. So she could move the Google Help. She'll say, nope, don't like that image. Nope, do that. So you have all those options for you. So keep that in mind. The other thing I mentioned in Google Docs training that I want to point out here that can save you a lot of time is you can always, best practice, let's say Gmail changed their logo. Let's say they changed the logo to be G instead of M. And you want to fix this poster. And you know it's perfect spot right there. It's like exactly where I want it. And I don't, maybe it's linked. It's got a whole bunch of settings to it. And I don't remember all that I did. If you're trying to replace an image to something that's already perfect the way you want, best option is to always replace image. You can do that by right-clicking and selecting the image that you select, and it will replace it in that same identical spot. Or you can go up here and replace image and do that as well. Huge time saver. Huge. Replace, replace, replace if you're just changing an image off, out and in, out and in. If you're using news sites, same concept. If you're using slides, that is just a normal terminology. Replace image when needed. So anyway, you made a poster And now I could actually insert this into Google Docs, couldn't I? I could go to docs.new and insert this image in here, can I? So let's go and just, you guys can just sit and get for a second. Docs and new, I could go to insert, drawing, from drive, and here's my demo poster. I want it to be a linked source. And now we can share this document. Jolene told me it's the new Gmail app. Oh no, I'll just double click and I will open the source, fix it. I'm going to remove the Gmail, say it's something different. Okay, go back to the doc. It will say, I'm moving too fast for it. Let me refresh. It will say update source. What they should. Update source. The Gmail is now gone. Hello, how awesome is that, right? So it could be lots of things. And the other thing that we didn't have time to talk about, but I just want to point out, this is same in slides. You do have diagrams. So if you are looking for a timeline, hierarchy, grid, and you don't know how to even know where to begin, Google's got your back. You have a lot of diagrams and stuff right here that you could go ahead and create if you choose to. So please make sure you check out those as well. There's tons of like that. For those that are interested in charts, you can actually insert a chart from sheets that you might already have, or you can create one on the go. So be aware of that as well, because that could be something that's very useful. You can really add a lot of graphics to that as well. So please be aware of what's already available if you don't know where to begin. If anybody's done graphic design, you'll be somewhat familiar with all the terminology as well. And again, I promise you, if you go back to the slide deck, there's plenty of resources for you regarding this. And I have an added bonus for you as well in the Google Drive folder that we'll talk about at the very end. So if you have any questions with regarding drawing, please reach out to me. As I mentioned, it is a hidden gem. I don't want you to miss out. And for those that are watching the video at a later time, you should be able to follow along with pretty much followed on script of what we did in Objective 3.